that is detachment, then apara and apara karma, but all the activities are done as a service to Krishna. So the Lord concludes the first 6 chapters by stating the most important sloka, saying 647, Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana. That means of all the yogis, the one who wait with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. That means the purpose of yoga is a linking process, connecting our lost relationship with Krishna. And whatever we do, whether it is karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, bhakti yoga, the point is that ultimately it should result in rendering transcendental loving service to Krishna. That is the perfection of yoga. That's what Krishna says, and the best and the highest. Now, the purpose of all this is also to attain some vairagya or detachment, which automatically comes when one performs bhakti. When one performs bhakti, automatically knowledge and detachment come. So Arjuna is asking in this sloka, for sloka number 1, he says, "O mighty armed one, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, that is tyaga, and of the renounced order of life, sannyasa. O killer of the Kesi demon, master of the senses." So some important points are here. Arjuna is addressing Krishna as Mahabaho. That means, O mighty armed one. That means Krishna can resolve his doubt that he has got this in his mind. Then he is addressing the Lord as Rishikesha, or the master of the senses, because when senses are controlled, then mind becomes peaceful and then intelligence is assimilated. And then he is also addressing the Lord as killer of the demon, Kesi, because doubt is like a demon. Anybody has got a doubt, it is like a demon. And he is addressing Krishna as Kesi, who, because Lord killed the demon Kesi. That means in this position, Arjuna is asking Krishna to clear the demon of doubt. Then he's asking what is the purpose of renunciation and the purpose of the renounced order of life. Because for him, Arjuna, he thought that renunciation means leave the battle, whereas actual renunciation means to serve the Lord without any personal motive or material motive. And that perfection of renunciation is to surrender to Krishna. And the renounced order of life is actually within the 4 ashramas, that is brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. So sannyasa does not just mean that wearing a saffron cloth and going around. So for sanya has got a higher purpose, which we'll discuss before we conclude the class today. Now, they said that there are 2 types of karma. Nitya karma, which are daily duties. That means we see in many Brahmanas' houses, Brahmanas who are really living the life of a Brahmana. They do Sandhya Vandana, Madhya Vandana, and Sayam Vandana, and so forth. These are all daily duties that have to be performed by the Grihasthas. The other one is Kamya Karma, which is specially meant for Grihasthas who perform some duties out of expectation of results. For example, some might perform a yajna for begetting a son. Some might perform a yajna for going to heavenly planets. These are all kamya karma. So there are 2, that is nitya karma, which are daily duties, which cannot be stopped. And there are kamya karmas, which are not a period on a daily basis, but then they are done with an expectation of some result from these fruitive activities. Now, tyaga, that means, I will explain what is sannyasa. But tyaga means actually giving up the results of work. So sannyasis give up the kamya karma, that is the fruitive activities, whereas the grihasthas perform kamya karma and nitya karma. For us, we can even relate that nitya karma to chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day, which we cannot give up. But grihasthas also are supposed to give up the results of the nitya karma and kamya karma. That is what is called tyaga. That is giving up the results of the work that we perform, whether we do Nitya Karma or Kamya Karma, is what is called renunciation. Or not renunciation, Tyaga. That means we renounce the result of the work. Now, renunciation is to actually give up the results of the activities. But what belongs to us that we are going to renounce, everything belongs to the Lord. We are only instruments in the hands of the Lord to perform some activities. So apparently, the results also belong to the Lord. So we can't say that we want to renounce the result. So renunciation, the process is that to give up activities that are not favorable to devotional service and keep activities that are favorable to devotional service. But the conclusion of the message of Bhagavad Gita is to attain detachment from the results of work. One should not be bound by, one should not be attached to the results of the work. Otherwise, what happens is if one is bound by the results in this material world. One should abandon the forgo the results of the work and rather offer it to the Lord or do everything as a service to the Lord, by which we automatically tyag or give up the results. Now, there is another important point that mentions is that some impersonalists, they consider themselves to be having a knowledge of Vedanta Sutra. But actually, the Vedanta Sutra is also meant to understand what is devotional service and for whom it is to be performed. The Lord himself is the composer of the Vedanta Sutra and he is its knower. So, the purpose of the understanding Vedanta Sutra is to know the Lord Krishna. That is explained by the Lord in chapter 15, text 15. And in fact, every scripture, every Veda concludes with only one thing: devotional service is the objective. And by doing this devotional service, we don't have to artificially try to gain knowledge, but one gets knowledge as well as detachment, that is vairagya. And that automatically leads one to surrender to the Lord Krishna, which is what the Lord is concluding in the last part of Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. So the purpose is of all these activities is to please Krishna. There is also a nice quote in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which says, what is bhakti? Bhakti, real bhakti means Anya Vilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Janavatam Anukulyena Krishna Anushīlanam Bhakti Ruttama. That means when first class devotional service develops, one is to be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monastic philosophy, and fruitive action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. So we'll understand some important points of this. Real devotional service is one that at that state one must become devoid of all material desires. One should not desire that I'm doing my devotional service, so I must expect this from the Lord, that from the Lord. Because any type of expectation of material desires is like doing business with the Lord, which is not right. I'm sure we won't like to do business with our own parents, that you do this for me, I'll do this for you. We are duty bound to our parents. So similarly, we are also duty bound to the Supreme Lord who provides everything for us. So we should not demand for any material desire. The next thing is that when first class devotional service develops, one should not acquire knowledge by monastic philosophy. The monastic philosophy or impersonalists, they think that me and God are everyone is same. That is what is monastic. But actually, we can never become God, and God has got his supreme position, and we, as minute part and parcels of the Lord, are supposed to serve the Lord for the pleasure of the Lord, not for our pleasure. And also, at that stage of devotional service, one must not perform fruitive activities, which is what I mentioned, Kamya Karma. And one must serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires, not the way we desire. Sometimes we might think that, okay, let me do this because I want it. It's not so. So any aspect of devotional service we do as per Sadhu Shastra and Guru. And the scriptures mention what pleases Krishna. And we must take guidance from our spiritual master and devotees of the Lord on how to apply these in our practical day-to-day devotional service. In the words of Srila Rupa Goswami, he says that renunciation is utilizing everything in Krishna's service. So everything belongs to Krishna. So when we utilize everything in Krishna's service, automatically Krishna becomes the enjoyer and we are offering the results to him. Now Arjuna also requests Krishna to summarize everything in such a way that he can remain equipoised. But yet he has some doubts, and doubts are always compared to demons. So this is how he is asking Krishna to clear the demon of doubt. That is why Keshi Nudana. Now we come to the second sloka, in which the Lord replies to Arjuna. He says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the giving up of activities that are based on material desire is what great learned men call the renounced order of life, which is sannyasa. And giving up the results of all activities is what is called renunciation. So renunciation or tyaga means giving up the results of all the activities which normally the grihasthas must do. And sannyasa is the fourth order of the ashrama, in which one does not perform activities that are based on material desires. So one may wear a saffron dress, but if he still got desires for material activities, then that is an artificial thing. The performance of activities for results has to be given up. This is the instruction of Bhagavad-gītā. But activities leading to advance in spiritual knowledge should not be given up. That means if we are trying to understand the scriptures like Bhagavad-gītā or Srimad Bhagavatam, we should not give up those activities because they can help us advance spiritual knowledge. In fact, only by this knowledge, we are also trying to understand what devotional service is and what is pure devotional service. And also sacrifice for the purifications of one's heart or for advancement in spiritual side should not be given up. That means any activity that helps us progress in pure devotional service should not be given up. Then there is mention of those who desire mukti. Mukti means liberation. Liberation means actually we are trying to seek mitigation from the sufferings of this material world. Now the Lord has created this material world, which itself the Lord declares is a place of suffering. Now if we are trying to mitigate the suffering, that is also a personal desire. So many times the Lord creates puts devotees in a situation of suffering for the purification of the devotee. The Lord is not personally interested in putting anyone into difficulty. But then if the Lord feels that putting the difficulty in suffering, the devotee will progress in devotional service, or he will perform pure devotional service by which he is not attached to fruitive result, then the Lord may do that. So that is why one should not try to attain even mukti. And these people, it is said that they chant Om Tat Sat. But we are given the best of all the mantras, that is the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Then the next one is the third sloka, in which Arjuna says, some learned men declare that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up as faulty. Yet other sages maintain that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be abandoned. So we will try to understand a little bit from this. In the Vedas, there are so many contradictions and controversies. It is not possible for us to understand these controversies completely because they are given with different perspectives. But there are many mental speculators who try to give their own conclusions. We'll understand some of these. Now here it says that, the Lord says that one should not, some sages say that acts of sacrifice, penance and charity should never be abandoned. Now in Kali Yuga, sacrifices are forbidden. We will understand this example. And also taking sannyas is forbidden. But also we see that the sacrifice for the Kali Yuga is chanting the holy name of the Lord, which we cannot stop. We have to do that. Now, it is not a karma kanda activity. It's a devotional activity. Similarly, taking sannyas in Kali Yuga is forbidden. But the taking sannyas for the purpose of preaching can always be taken, which is what our movement does. Many devotees, they take sannyas, but then they take the sannyas not for the sake of taking it, but then they travel and preach the glories of the Lord. So such type of sannyas is permitted. Some more example we take. Now, the Lord himself says, what is the purpose of performing sacrifice? He says that purpose of performing sacrifice is to please Krishna. And if that is not done, that sacrifice is a waste. In other, but karmis do these yajnas to attain some fruitive results. But devotees should abstain from trying to do this to attain these fruitive results, which nowadays even we see that many devotees perform yajnas and etc. to attain some fruitive results, but that is not devotional service. It's a karmakanda activity. In the other ages, the sages and all used to perform Ashwamedha Yajna, but in Kali Yuga, it is not practically possible. Only means of deliverance is Sankirtana Yajna, that is chanting the holy name of the Lord. Then there are two opinions about this Tyaga, or giving up the spiritual activities. As some say that giving spiritual activities are faulty. Like there are two different opinions for everything as per Arjuna in the 3rd chapter. That is why he is seeking Krishna to clarify the doubt of demon. So it's said that one opinion says that one should give up spiritual activities because they are faulty. And the second opinion says that one should never give up yajna, tapasya and dana. I mentioned about yajna. Now tapasya means austerity. The very word austerity means not sitting and in a particular posture for minutes or hours together, but rather perform austerities for the pleasure of the Lord. So one can take austerities by which one can give pleasure to the Lord. For example, getting up early in the morning is an austerity. We recommend that one should get up and attend Mangalarti and so forth. These activities taught before Brahma Muhurta. And sometimes one might feel, oh, it is very cold, I might not want to take bath in the morning. But that is an austerity. But sitting and making a posture for 15 minutes or 1 hour and all is not an austerity. So that's why some say that tapasya should be given up, and some say that tapasya should not be given up. Then the third point that is mentioned is that dana or charity. Charity is always permitted for proper cause. Charities to institutions like hospitals, schools and all are fruitive activity, which will give some benefit in the next life. One might become more pious. The Lord may award some material opulences. But then charity is always a must. It is said that a grihastha should never give up charity because the other three ashramas, that is brahmachari, vanaprastha and sannyasi, are maintained by the charity given by the grihasthas. So practically, if you see, charity should not be given up. Similarly, duties. A Kshatriya has to fight. He cannot say that I cannot punish a criminal. So he has to fight, he has to punish a criminal, whether he is a grihastha. Arjuna was a grihastha. And so Krishna gave this instruction to Arjuna as a grihastha, and he was a Kshatriya. So like that, duties for every ashrama and every varna are specified in the Shastras and is given in Bhagavad-gītā itself. And none of the activities we see, they have to be given up. Rather, everything should be done as a service to Krishna, and that he is the supreme enjoyer. Particularly the fruitive activities should be given up, but certain activities can be done as a service to Krishna. Now, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of the acharyas in our parampara, he says that in his commentary, like some say there is a fault in all activities. For example, there is violence in all the activities. So while violence is not allowed, so we must give up the activities. So abandon these activities. Whereas another group says, don't abandon. We have to perform karma. Like for example, Arjuna has to fight because he's a Kshatriya, so he cannot give up. So this is the opinion of two different groups of philosophers. The conclusion for which is all given in the further sloka. Then one group of followers say that Vedas are full of faults. Now, I mentioned in the beginning of the class itself, Vedas are true because they are knowledge given by the Lord. But there are some contradictions, but one must understand these contradictions in the right perspective. For example, it is said that cow killing is a great violence. It is true, animal killing is not permitted, particularly in Kali Yuga. It's a very great offense, killing a cow. And some say that animals are sacrificed for giving a new lease of life, or there are some places I mentioned that by killing a cow, one gets a human form of life directly. Now, these are contradictions in the Vedas, but one must understand these contradictions, as I mentioned before, in the right perspective. Actually, if you look at killing any animal, is a big offense. It's a big crime. There is the conclusion is all this is that there are different perspectives, but one must understand what is applicable in Kali Yuga. Like, for example, I mentioned Kali Yuga sannyas is forbidden, but sannyas is taken by few, selected few, to preach the glories of the Lord. Then the conclusion of these three of the discussions for today is that is given in 11th Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 5th chapter, 32nd sloka, Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam, Sangopangasta Parsadam, Yajnai Sankirtana Praya, Yajanti Sumedasa. In the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the names of Krishna. So intelligent people are those who perform congregational chanting or the Sankirtana. And then, although the Lord's complexion is not blackish, is Krishna himself, that is, the Lord appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the Lord is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. Also, we see there is a quote in Brihadanaradiya Purana which says, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Kevalam, Kalu Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gatiranyata, which means for spiritual progress in this age of Kali, there is no alternative, there is no alternative, there is no alternative to the chanting of the holy name, the holy name, the holy name of the Lord. That means it is said that 3 times if someone mentions a particular point in the scriptures, it is mentioned 3 times. That means that is the perfection of the quote. So in the Kali Yuga, chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the only sacrifice that can be performed by anybody. Before I conclude, and there's one more sloka I would like to quote. Atas Sri Krishna Namadi Nabhavet Grahyam Indriyai Sevanamokhe Jihvado Swayam Eva Spuratyataha. The translation is, because Krishna's form, qualities, pastimes are all in the absolute platform, material senses cannot therefore appreciate them. That means Lord is absolute. That means his name, form, qualities, pastimes are all absolute. That's why they are all non-different. They are all have the same potency. But with our material senses, we cannot appreciate them. When a conditioned soul is awakened to Krishna consciousness and renders service by using his tongue to chant the Lord's holy name and taste the remnants of the Lord's food, the tongue is purified and one gradually comes to understand who Krishna really is. That means when one chants the Mahamantra and also tastes the remnants of Lord's food, that is Krishna Prasada, then the tongue becomes purified. When the tongue is purified, when the tongue is controlled, automatically the belly, the genitals, everything becomes controlled. And then one can actually understand who Krishna is. So with this, I conclude the class for the day. If you have any questions, 1 or 2 questions or comments, I can take it for the next 1 minute.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, pranam to everybody assembled. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat pranam. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
You all very
Hare
much.
Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.